Hi, everybody. This is Mike Oppenheim, and you are listening to Coffin Talk, interviews with the living, a weekly podcast that explores how our views on death affect the way we live our life. This week we have Indra Rinzler. He is a lifetime spiritual seeker. He's a healer, teacher, and offers life readings for clients. He's been studying astrology and spirituality for 50 years. He first learned of the Enneagram of personality in 1999. He uses these two modalities individually and in combination. His focus is to help clients wake up to who they really are. Welcome, Indra. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you very much. And you did well with it. Enneagram.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Yeah, I'd not come across that word before. I am actually very, very into astrology from the time I was a very little kid. And my 18th birthday present was my dad took me to Los Angeles to see Chakrapani. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Chakrapani, sure. Very famous Vedic astrologer. Said to be the first Indian astrologer to live in America.
Yeah, and my dad and him became friends. They were lifelong friends, or not lifelong, but they were friends for like 20 or 30 years until he passed. So, and I met him, I think, twice. So that was the beginning. And I was only bringing that up just so you know that I have some familiarity, but our audience may not. So before we get into all that, real quick, the first three questions we ask every single guest is, how old are you? Where did you grow up? And what generation, if any, do you consider yourself a member of?
I grew up in New York, and I'm 77, and I want to say I was the Beat generation, but I suppose I was really what they call the Boomer generation, and no, I don't really relate too much to any of it.
Awesome. And actually, that'll kind of segue into an interesting question. Does astrology, by the way you learned it and practice it, believe in generations?
Well, I'm so glad you asked this, because when I heard, I listened to a little bit of I always listen to a little bit of podcast to get kind of into your rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
And what initially came up with the question is that we think of, I think somebody had said, talking about media generations, Generation X and all these things that are media realities or media facts. But the reality, what you're really talking about is some planet, like the Pluto cycle or Uranus cycle or Neptune cycle. I can't say which one it is in particular. Mm-hmm. Jupiter is 12-year cycles. Saturn is 28, 30-year cycle. And so which one are you talking about? But I think that they actually would align with some planetary events.
Awesome. I love that answer. Yeah, I've never even thought to ask it until you kind of got me thinking. And also, I just find it interesting because we're in this contemptuous time where the generation is thrown around as a pejorative, which I've never seen. And that's why I ask guests, is I just kind of think it's an interesting way to see where people are evaluating themselves. And speaking of selves, another natural question I like to ask any astrologer is another popular term today, and one that I've often used in my life, is sometimes people refer to people as old souls, but the way I'm more understanding how time is a variable and it's not necessarily related, and things I've read about the Akashic records and all that, I'm curious, do you use that term? Do you like that term? Does that term have any value?
Well, I may occasionally use it, and in my spiritual path, it's a term that people use, but I think that, so I did use it from that, but I think that to me, it has become sort of useless. I read in a book, I think it might have been Conversations with God, and they said that all souls were created at the same time. So old soul doesn't have any relevance from that, but I think that most people use it. It's not so much about age, but I think old soul has a tendency to mean that somebody is living more in their soul and not so materialistic.
And so how do you feel about this current epoch that we're living in, like the 2020s-ish, like with COVID and everything going on? I'm not asking you to talk directly about American or even international politics so much as, do you feel like the souls on Earth are kind of waging a self battle, so not against each other, but within the self, between materialism and the spirituality, or do you see it differently?
Well, the way I see it is the yugas. You know anything about the yugas?
Yeah, Kali Yuga and so on.
Yeah, Kali Yuga, Dwapara Yuga. We believe that it's Dwapara Yuga. Kali Yuga is over. The dense age is over, mm-hmm. and that it's a time of a body and mind. That all of the modalities in my 70 years of life and 50 years on the path, I've seen a constant change. I remember when I first moved to California in 1970 and found natural food stores, which aren't really around anymore, but the whole idea of organic and natural living, and I mean, it was just a beginning, and it's been adapted by the mainstream society. I remember back at this time, the word karma, we'd first hear the word karma, and we'd go, well, what is that? And then 6 months later, we'd say karma, and somebody would say, what are you talking about? And now it's like it's mainstream, mainstream TV, karma,
Yeah.
it's no big deal.
I totally agree. And it's funny because I grew up in California, so I thought that whole movement was really normal until I moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1999. And then I was like, oh, they don't even have a natural food store here. And then as I was graduating and moving, the first one opened. And I remember just thinking, oh, that's so interesting. And actually, you alluded to it, but what happened about 26 years ago that put you on the spiritual path that you've been on for 50 years?
What happened 26 years ago?
Maybe I did the math wrong, but you said you've been on the spiritual path for 50 years.
50 years, yeah, since the 70s. It wasn't, well, what happened was not an event particularly. I didn't have a near death. I didn't quit my corporate job. I never started my corporate job. In fact, I dropped out of the number 2 MBA program in the country at the time. And I don't remember saying it, but the line I said was that it wasn't that I didn't want to do business. It's that I don't want to work for a corporation. Basically, MBA kind of talked me out of corporations and working that way.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. So in your process of Western education, so to speak, you actually decided that the product of that path wasn't going to fit you. So did you immediately pivot and buy a sari and go to India and shave your hair off and everything, or what was it?
Well, there were plenty of. It's interesting to read some of the people my age, their stories, and some of them did. I have a friend in India who's been there for probably almost 50 years. That was an actress up for her big part. Mm-hmm. And her agent told her that she was invited to the director's house for a big weekend, and then she was going to be able to. They would offer her the big role, and during the weekend, while she was checking out, and this was again in the early 70s, she was at this guy's house, and she found an Osho book in his library, and she was sort of perusing the house and read the book, and by Monday she had left California and flew to India.
Wow, that's awesome.
So I do know somebody who had that story, but that wasn't mine. What I like to say, there's another Indian teaching, and I don't know why we're getting into the Indian. I hope that's okay.
Oh yeah, no, anything's okay. Yeah,
for your listeners. But anyway, there's an Indian teaching called nete, not this, not that. Mm-hmm. And I think for many of us, the path is, it isn't that way. I mean, for some, she gets on the plane and she goes. Not that she knows what she's looking for, but she just feels that this isn't it. It's also a nete in a sense. But the thing was, is that it was one step at a time. I just took another step of getting free and getting more directed. And it was not this, not that. And so the step looks a bit like rejecting things around you, but in that you are pulling yourself to the path, to the direction and the path that you want, something that is it. There was a famous story. I don't know where I heard this, but anyways, in the 60s when we had the draft, and there was, my generation, we had the draft lottery and all the draft stories, and I heard about my friends had a wrestler who had learned to throw up on command because he had to lose weight. And he when he went to his draft interview, he just threw up at the right times in order to get rejected. And we learned that. And there was I heard a story that there was a guy who went into his draft interview and said, not this, not this, not this. And they sent him to a psychiatrist, not this, not this, not this. And then they handed him his rejection paper. He said, this is it. So he kind of did the same thing. I don't know if that's probably true, but it's kind of an urban myth back then around at the time, it was kind of an issue for us. As talk about generations.
Yeah, no, for sure. And even if it's apocryphal, it made me laugh, and it's a good one. And my parents are exactly your age, so I'm into your generation for sure. I mean, I listened to all the music, and I grew up hearing the stories and loving them.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So this show is about death. My question for you is what I ask everyone, but what do you think is going to happen to you when you die? And then I have a twist for it. Since you're an astrologer, have you ever bothered to do a reading to see when you're going to die?
Well, let's see. I have not done that. There are some people there. I've seen books about death and astrology, and it doesn't interest me in the least.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really a very ordinary type of astrologer. There's a lot of the things that people look to, I'm not really that interested in.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of describe it as I kind of learned all the facts and then I kind of rejected them and kind of just figured out I'm interested in the energy of the planets or the energy of the configurations, not the rules and the facts, that this is this and this is that, because it isn't always that way. My own death, well, I mean, I guess I thought about it. I think that I had a teacher once that said that we've done it 1,000 times. It's not that unusual when we get to it. And I've kind of noticed that most of the people that I know that have gone through it, it seemed to be that it was the right time. And so if I'm not feeling it at the moment, it's probably not the right time. And so I kind of feel that it is a natural process and that what's supposed to happen will happen and I'll be ready for it.
But what do you think will actually happen to you? Like, will your consciousness remain?
Well, I don't really think. I've read some things and I think that I would imagine that you're going to float, that some soul spirit is going to float from the body and then we're going to move into another realm. Whether it's white light or not, I think most of these things kind of have that we hear or kind of have truth in them, but it may not be exactly, as we hear it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really know. I don't really know anything, so I don't really know exactly what it's going to be.
That's cool. That's interesting. So actually it's funny because Chakrapani, I think, was actually most famous for being a predictor of death via astrology. That was like his forte. And my father has been obsessed with his reading for that specific purpose. And he's announced it at like the dinner table with excitement for more than 20 years, maybe even 30. And now he doesn't say it with excitement. And it's like interesting to me. But so for me personally, I don't care and don't need to know, like you said. But if I knew ahead of time, it wouldn't bother me. But I like the way you answered that. That was intriguing to me. I think that it also corresponds to what you said about learning the rules and then not necessarily following them. I think that your spirit is consistent in all of your answers, which I like. I have a similar spirit. What sucks is that our spirit goes into our children, and then when you're raising them, it's not as fun. Because my children also don't love rules and regulations. Let's jump into the word I wasn't pronouncing so successfully, Enneagram of personality. I have never heard of that, and instead of researching it, I decided to let you answer it for me and our audience. So what is the Enneagram of personality?
So the Enneagram is it's actually Greek. It's not that the teachings have anything to do with Greek, but the name they gave it is Greek, and it means 9-sided figure. And it's a combination of 3 geometric shapes combined to form a figure that has 9 points. And the 9 points with the Enneagram of personality have personality types or personality archetypes at the points. But you can put traditionally. They put planet. You can put anything at the points. Planets. You can put musical notes. You can put foods. Enneagram of personality says that there are 9 personality types, and I believe that it's not just a personality typing system, but it's actually that there are 9 personality types, and they serve humanity because we are a social species. We need these 9 types because we all have different skills. We all get triggered by different things, and we all have different skills. And it's the blending of our skills that can build society. And at the same time, it's an incredible spiritual tool because by releasing our core triggers, which the Enneagram of personality clearly shows us, then we can live in the moment. We have this incredible opportunity to live in the moment when we reject the obsessions and compulsions that keep us blocked from living in the time. The point is that there are 9 personality types. One of them is our core type, and it is our core lens, the way we navigate our life, our core personality.
Wow, I love that, and I love it for a lot of reasons, way too many to list on a podcast to my audience, but I will start with, is it easier and better for people to just look it up themselves, or would it actually be efficient and a good use of our limited time to have you tell us all 9 right now?
Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to Coffin Talk. I am proud to say that we are offering premium subscriptions at my website, mikeyop.com. That's MIKEYOPP.com. So please head over and consider supporting us. Thank you so much.
Well, I think my intuition says you probably want to hear about the 9.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it isn't a value. There is value to spend a few hours Googling this in order to figure it out for yourself, because it's like Enneagram. I actually do it together with Enneagram, and I said it's like astrology. I meant to say.
Mm-hmm.
I do Enneagram and astrology together, and my teacher is maybe the only one who does it. Who did it, who taught me, is the only 25 years ago, is the only one I know that has any kind of a system. But the fact is that they're very similar. And the difference is, to me, is that astrology is like the track coach, looking at elbows and knees in order to get the 100-meter time down. It's very, a moon is this, Saturn is that, Jupiter is this. The Enneagram is like the fan in the stand looking at the whole race, and looking at us in a larger generic way in order to be able to understand and to understand ourselves, understand the personality, in order to release the core triggers, in order to be free.
Wow. Yeah, that was very well said, and I'm definitely interested in this to enough of an extent that I would love for you to just at least briefly list the 9 types, and maybe even like an example of each one, or how, like if there's a famous person who is an obvious iconic person for that.
Okay, let's see how we go. So one is, let me back up for a second. Let me tell you the best way to do it is that there are 3 core instincts or centers of intelligence. That's anger, emotion, and fear. And while we have all 3 of them in us, one of them is at our core. And so we give the Enneagram points, the 9 points, numbers, but they also have names. But of course, we don't agree on the names, and so we use the numbers. There's no hierarchy between the names, but the ones that are core anger are 8, 9, and 1. 8 is the bossiest personality. It's the assertive, Jack Nicholson. It's the one, I call them all offense and no defense. They're protecting the teddy bear in their heart, but they do it by being very bossy and very demanding.
I love it.
Okay, and you may recognize some people in your life, especially in the audience too. Okay, so the 9, which is a neutral type, the 8 is the assertive anger, and the neutral anger is the 9. It's called the peacemaker, and they disengage from themselves by as a need to create peace. They disengage from themselves and connect with other people. We call it accommodating. They accommodate themselves to other people, and accommodating, there is no disharmony except that it's in them, and that's what they have to learn.
Okay.
Okay, and so the 9, and they're the I think Julia Roberts, they say, is a 9, very sweet, very innocent, not very pushy. There's an anger and a frustration below the surface, but it doesn't ever come out.
Okay.
One is the perfectionist. This is interior anger. The perfectionist, they want to make sure that everything is done right in their life in order to overcome their feelings of defection within themselves, that they're defective. And so the way they do that is by making sure that everything is done right. Of course, it's their own standards and ideas, and they completely change. But they live with this need for perfection. They said Prince Charles is a 1. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a one that comes to me too. Now, 2, 3s, and 4s are the emotion type.
Okay.
Emotion outward is 2 is the helper. We know these people, the natural moms, they take care of other people. They're never taking care of their own needs, but they're taking care of everybody else. Twos, let's see. They say Marilyn Monroe is a 2. How to be, at the core is the need to have everybody love them because they don't feel lovable within themselves. That's why they take care of other people. 3 is the achiever. This is neutral emotion. Don Draper, Mad Men, is the typical 3 of the producer who is achieving in order to feel a value within themselves. 4 is the inward emotion type. All of the Bob Dylan and Michael Jackson, these are the most creative people, the most beautiful, yet they don't feel the most beautiful, elegant with the way they dress, and they walk across the room with such style and grace. And they are incredible with sensitivity and creativity. They create the umbilical cord. They are the connection, the umbilical cord from the divinity to earth in terms of aesthetics. To be able to have us to appreciate beauty and sensitivity and through all their creativity. So that's the 4.
Okay.
5, 6, and 7 are the last 3. That's the fear type. So the inward fear is 5. This is the overthinker, the observer. Computer nerd type is kind of a little bit what they might look like. They're also the brainiest. They want to know. They protect themselves by knowing how things work, and they can get overwhelmed. John Hurt was a 5 actor, and Meryl Streep was a 5 actress, or is a 5 actress. And let's see, Howard Hughes, the 5. They hold on to their money. That's why they can be very rich, but they're greedy because they feel they're so thin, and they feel that they can be blown away and depreciated by strong energy, and so they can hide within their studying. 6 is the loyalist, the neutral fear type. They're the home of anxiety. We know these people. They need guidance. They're very. It's not so much insecurity, but it's apprehension and fear about possible future events that mostly never happen. And let's see. 6 is the neurotic. The neurotic kind of Woody Allen kind of an attitude is kind of 6-ish. 7 is the last one. That's mine. The enthusiasts. We're the adventurers. We're always looking for greener pastures. 7's Ram Dass. Let's see. Very outgoing, and not that he seemed that way, but he was. But the adventurers, the ones that keep looking for greener pastures, we're the enthusiasts. We're the ones that have an ability to. We're the only ones that bring enthusiasm, and it's our natural enthusiasm to avoid looking at our feelings. Anything but looking at our feelings.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So those are the 9 types.
Wow. That was really interesting. And I like the way the emotions weave into it. I was listening and trying to learn, and it's hard because I hear similarities, but then I can see, because I looked it up and I see the diagram, and I can see now how it really is like a geometric thing, which is awesome. So thank you. That was really interesting. And you did already kind of explain how you connected to astrology. So while I would like to hear more about that, I'll save that if we have time. The main question I'm dying to ask you, because I need to ask every single astrologer this because it's the most important question to me, is do you believe that there is only predetermination, only free will, neither, or both?
Let's see. Predetermination or free will? I think it's a combination. I think that things are determined. By the way, I wanted to mention that I had read that while that at birth, the moment of death is predetermined, but not the method.
Oh, wow. I like that a lot.
So that how we get there is up to our own nature, our own free will. But the fact is, it's going to happen.
I love that. Wow.
So there you go. I'm glad I brought that up, because there you go. That's the middle path. It is both. We have free will, but that doesn't mean complete free will.
Yeah, I've never heard anyone state it that way, and I love that. That gelled. It resonated really well for me. So with that in mind, I had this question worded differently, but now I'm going to change it because I actually want to tailor to what you just said. Have you ever been frustrated by a client because they won't accept something and you felt like they really needed to, which is very different from asking, has a client ever like not wanted to hear what you had to say? Like, does it ever bother you personally?
Yeah, I would say it does, but I mean, it doesn't very long, but it does at the moment. You wish more of everybody, you wish that the sick at the hospital felt better. You wish that the people that don't pass their test in school would learn better. I mean, I think you wish that for everybody, but at the same time, going on is also that they have their own truths and that they got to follow their own truths. And if they could hear what you say, then life would be different. But the thing is that they can't quite hear it yet. But I do feel that people come to me. I basically believe people are sent. That I call it the gurus, maybe spirits or gods. That they send people, and it's at a time, and that the timing is perfect. That they're ready to hear what I have to say. And I had a client recently. I'm now a couple of months backed up. This whole year, but it's the first time I've been booked up for a few months in advance. And a lady told me that, kind of amazed. She said that she had booked 2 or 3 months before, and here it was the night before she had a revelation of something that I then proceeded to tell her the next day. And that she was amazed that 3 months ago, when she wanted the appointment, nothing happened. But the night before, on her own, she starts to get an inkling of what I'm about to tell her. Not that she knew I was going to tell her, but what I told her confirmed what she had already kind of thought about the night before, which was a brand new idea. And I don't remember what it was. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Do you understand my point? That the timing was such that the timing was so perfect that it started, that the light of it started, like the dawn of it started coming the night before. And it was like 3 months it could have come, but no, it was the night before. It had nothing to do with anything that I had done or anything that I had said. That she had already started kind of driving into the city of whatever I was going to tell her.
Wow.
Whatever her truth was that she needed to hear.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I guess kind of along a similar line, have you ever not told a client something because you just knew they couldn't handle it?
Well, yeah, I think there's always, I had a teacher once who said that, I've been waiting 10 years to tell you that, I think there's always some things that you realize that people can't hear it yet. You wish you could say something and they're not really ready to hear it. They're really defensive, or they're they're just acting out in a way that you can't quite go as far as you wish you could. And there's nothing wrong with that either. That people just hear what they can hear at the time. If you tell them, that doesn't mean they're going to hear it anyway. So
that's a very well said. I was a teacher for 10 years, and I definitely observed that enough times. And obviously, I do it too. I'm not some infallible idiot.
I think the reality of it is that the reason that we say it is because we have a need to say it, not because the person is ready to hear. I don't have so much of a need to say it anymore.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Wow. And actually, that kind of adds another question, which is, well, let me ask this other one first, and then I'll get to that. So I mentioned the Akashic Records briefly, but they do kind of tie into astrology for me, at least now, the way I've understood it. One, do you believe in them? And two, do you think they're important and they work with the fields that you're working in?
Well, I guess I believe in it, but that's not something I particularly access. I believe my approach is science. I call it science and intuition. That the science is the reality of astrology and the imprinting of the planets and the imprinting of the moment and the facts of how things flow. That's the science, and then intuition is that I get information that I believe is from the higher side of the higher self of the client. Mm-hmm. I don't call it from spirit. It could be, but I feel it's like from the higher side of the client. And so I give out the science, and then they say, oh, I better look at my childhood. And then I say, oh, maybe you need to look at your childhood. They don't say it verbally. I just feel it. And it's like their higher self saying, "Guy, we need to look at our childhood."
That totally makes sense. And I guess my last question, and then there's one more after this, but the last question that's tailored to you would be, it sounds like you've enjoyed the aging process, but it sounds like that's really just a way of saying you've enjoyed your life. So I am curious, looking back at the vantage point that you have now, is there any one period over another that you would encourage people to really like savor, or do you think it's all just a blessing and it just go with it?
Well, I'm a 7, so it's all a blessing and go with it. But I did want to tell you that I had this thing that the different ages, it's like 21 is wonderful because you have freedom, but you don't have much experience, and so it's really 21s is a little hard because you want to tell people stuff and they haven't had enough experience. Like you're going to have a problem, and oh no, I haven't had the problem yet, so I can't see it. So 21 is it can be difficult. 18 is actually freer than 21 because at 18, you don't know anything, but at 21 you've had enough experiences to say, oh no, that's not me, But at 25 now, I call it the perfect age. You have had enough experience so that you know the downside, and you don't know everything, but yet you're still flexible enough to be able to change rather quickly. By 28, you become more rigid. By 32, you're even more rigid. And 35, I call the height of arrogance. Arrogance is that I know better. And so the 35s, they, don't tell me what to do. I know better. And then as you get into 38 and 42, you realize you don't know anything. You start realizing that all that you thought you knew, you didn't, it didn't really work. You've already been on all the dates, and you've already, tried all the jobs, and you're kind of at wit's end in the sense that that it's been very difficult. And then by the late 40s and at 50, it's like 50, it like completely changes. It's like, I don't have to be in my ego anymore. Like I call it your hormones drop away. I'm not talking about menopause only, but this whole need for identity and need to be seen and all of that kind of soothes a bit, and you can just start to listen and get into your deficiencies. 60s are even more free. It's a wonderful time in your 60s to let go of things that you haven't let go before. If you don't let go of them in your 60s, you probably never will. 70s is really free. I like to say us 70-year-olds, we sit around and we're happy to say that we know less today than we did yesterday.
I love it. That was great. That was such a great answer and such a great interview. We're up on time, but I always give my guests the floor, and so I just let you say whatever you want to our audience, but I'm going to assume you're going to be using science and intuition with your answer.
Well, actually, I'm not. What I'm going to say is that I have 2 free offers I like to give any listeners on the podcast. If you're interested in learning about taking an Enneagram test, I will send you a free test. It's about a 5 or 10 minute self-test that you do on your own. If you're interested in getting your Vedic chart, I'm happy to send you your Vedic chart for free. It's not a reading. It's just a chart. I will make some comments on it and help you to understand how to read it because it's not round, it's rectangular. And you email me at indrarinzler@gmail.com. You give me, for the birth chart, I need birth time, date, and place. And I will send you your chart, or if you want the Enneagram test, I'll send that to you.
Sounds good to me. I definitely like it. I like you. I like your attitude, and I want to thank you again for coming on the show. Everybody, his name is Indra Rinzler, and he gave you his email address, so please send him an email and get those 2 free offers that he offered. And also, you could just email him and tell him that you enjoyed the show. For everyone listening at home, once again, my name is Mike Oppenheim. The best way to support our show is to head over to MikeyOpp.com. That's MIKEYOPP.com, and you can sign up for the free once-a-week essays that I write, which include the podcast announcements and other goodies. Once again, this has been an episode of Coffin Talk. My name is Mike Oppenheim, and we will see you soon.